Alright, so this is our last video on urbanization. This is culture of the late 1800s, early 1900s, and notice I said leisure time. Hint, they liked to read. They didn't have the mind-numbing television or the cell phones or anything like that. They read for fun. So a lot of these things are going to focus on books and some other things as well. A lot of writers we're going to talk about. Now, the popular thing to do was not go and buy a $1.99 app or whatever for your phone. It was to get a dime novel, and that cost a dime, sorry. Dime novels were kind of installment series, and they were fairly inexpensive, and you could kind of wrap yourself up in them, and then you were wanting to get another one. And so you had these tiny little stories and segments to give you, overarching statements. And this is what people bought for fun. Now, the biggest in hindsight, and although not at his time, was Samuel Clemens, a.k.a. Mark Twain. Now, Mark Twain was his writer name, and he is known, among other things, there's been a lot of controversy about Huckleberry Finn, the language used in Huckleberry Finn. Now, Mark Twain left a certain word in there, which by our society is seen as vulgar and immoral and completely degrading. However, Mark Twain believed in keeping it real and realism, so he wrote in the language of what he heard at that time, and that word at that time was used very, very frequently. By our standards today, it would not be used. But Mark Twain, again, is writing what he hears. So realism is writing or drawing in a sense that you're really there. Okay? Now, before I leave Mark Twain, one last thing we have to talk about is a phrase Mark Twain gave us, and it's the Gilded Age. Now, the Gilded Age, I'll tell you this illusion in the top two pictures there. I could take a desk, spray paint it gold, put it on eBay, and I might find some unsuspecting soul like Little Wayne who has a liking for gold to buy this golden desk, and he would get it home and discover, oh my goodness, it's just a desk that's been painted gold. It has all these flaws. He'd be upset because he was expecting everything was going to be gold about this, but it was just the exterior. The interior had all kind of little problems. Now, Mark Twain said, he gave us the term Gilded Age. Now, Gilded Age is basically meaning, and the phrase that goes with it is, the wealth of the few hid the problems of the many. Basically, guys, the only people making money at this time are those robber barons we talked about in industrialization. Everybody else is really, really suffering, eking out an existence. I would not say paycheck to paycheck. I would say day to day, hour by hour, just whatever it might be. And so that was the Gilded Age. There wasn't really much money to be had unless you had a monopoly or you worked your way up through a political machine, something like that. Otherwise, you're going to be in the same state as everyone else. Now, a second writer we have is Jack London. Now, Jack London is actually a naturalist. He wrote a very famous book called Call of the Wild. Now, naturalism is portraying nature as this untamable beast, meaning you leave it alone and you have to tame things. But nonetheless, the wild still calls. So we have that other school of thought there of these naturalist writers who are going to write these fantastic stories for people to listen to, read. Now, the most popular one over Twain and over Jack London was Horatio Alger. Now, Horatio Alger wrote books like Strive and Succeed, The Brave and the Bold, From Farm Boy to Senator. Now, he was the most popular. Why? These are rags to riches stories, a la Andrew Carnegie or somebody like that. So people love these because they go, hey, I'm a farm boy. What would it take for me to be a senator? Hey, I'm brave and I'm bold. I'm going to strive for success. And so people love these stories. They ate them up. Now, later in life, Horatio Alger's kind of been forgotten. Mark Twain has been remembered. Why? Because Mark Twain kind of exposed the bad things that were going on, and this was a bad time. It wasn't a good time. But in hindsight, everything's always 50-50. You always have a chance to go back correct, but we don't have that at the moment. Now, newspapers was where everybody got a ton of their sources. The information was not on the internet, on an app, something like that. It was in a newspaper. And these two gentlemen here came up with a new style of journalism. This is William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer. They are two media moguls of newspapers, and they are going to compete for the attention of readers. Later on, we're going to talk about they used yellow journalism. Now, yellow journalism is something like you have here, the Weekly World News, Abraham Lincoln was a woman. They are sensational stories that catch your attention, give you a little bit of a buzz, and make you want to go and read that. They may be completely false. But why do we do this? Why do we want to read these things? Because we like the details. Now, yellow journalism came from a cartoonist named Richard Colt, and he drew something called the Yellow Kid. He worked for Hearst, I believe, and Pulitzer bought him off, or it could have been vice versa. And then they hired it, and they fought back and forth about this, and so that's why we call it yellow journalism. But basically, yellow journalism is sensationalist stories to attract readers. That's all it is. TMZ. All right. Now, we also have the rise of spectator sports at this time. Now, the big spectator sports we had were baseball, football, basketball, so not yet. So baseball, football, boxing was a big one. And then lastly, tennis. Remember, this is coming from England, right? Now, basketball really doesn't hit the scenes till much, much later. It doesn't become popular. But these were the big spectator sports. You could go and enjoy your time. We also have the rise of amusement parks. One of the biggest amusement parks in New York to go to, and it's still open today, although it's much, much down scale from what it was, is Coney Island. This is where we have the idea of the Coney hot dog. But Coney Island, where you could go and have a swimming pool. People didn't have swimming pools in their backyards or anything like that. So if you wanted to go swim, you had to go to these big community pools. Coney Island had one of those. They had ice skating rink using that in the winter, and they had all these different things, Wild West shows, Ferris wheels, and people love to go and enjoy these places. And amusement parks still attract people today. Now, some other fads we had, the bicycle became wildly popular around this time. Everyone wanted a bicycle because cars are not up there yet, and this was kind of a way to get around. Also, if you wanted to show someone that you liked them, that you cared for them, somebody comes over today, and maybe it's not so much anymore, but somebody comes over and visit, you're going to put out some type of food. You're going to put out crackers and something like that. That's called etiquette, manners. But at this time, it was Coca-Cola and Hershey's bar. These were the two kind of new things, and it showed that you had money, you had prestige, you had power. Now, we also have mail order catalogs. People are living in the rural areas, and Sears and Roebuck came up with a catalog. This is the same Sears that's struggling right now and could potentially go out of business. And so you could look in this catalog, order from the catalog, mail it in, and via the train they would send you your stuff, so that you're able to do this, and it promotes consumerism and all that good stuff that we've mentioned before. Now, lastly thing here is the mail service changed. The mail service in the West Indies was the Pony Express. You use the pony. At this time, it's all railroads. Again, going back into the monopolies of the railroads. And that really doesn't change until the establishment of the USPS, the United States Postal Service. And that's struggling right now because of the advent of email and text messaging. I mean, things have changed rapidly in the last 100 years. But there you go with that. That was our turn of the century.